All right, guys, let's get right into it. This is the lost art of power training, the highest expression of physical capability. Now, in this video, I'm going to break down and conceptualize the process of becoming a more powerful, athletic, dynamic individual. Now, this is a very nuanced topic, and I find that there's not much content about power training online, right? There's a lot of fitness videos that can tell you, how to add 5 pounds to your max or gain a couple pounds of muscle in 6 weeks. But there's very few that actually break down power training in depth. So that's exactly what I'm about to do. So let's start with this, man. What is power? Okay, power is force times speed, or in simpler terms, anytime you got to express force violently. So think about your powerful, dynamic, athletic action. There's a lot of things that are going on at once, right? Anytime you perform something powerful, there's strength, control, precision, timing, athleticism, all happening in a singular moment or a single bout. So to me, power is the king of all qualities, right? Think about your common athletic movements, right? Something like the perfect jump. Maybe you're dunking a basketball, right? Slamming the ball into the hoop. Think about something like a full sprint where you accelerate, you hit max stride, and you're imparting so much force into the ground, yet it's so effortless. Think about something like a forceful takedown when you're wrestling, right? You hit that perfect timing, that perfect takedown. The opponent feels weightless. You send a body flying. Anytime you can express power, it's one of the most greatest joys and privileges that your body can express. Now, not only that, power is what separates the truly capable from the ones that just look good, right? Your ability to express force violently is literally the differentiator between show muscle and go muscle. And here's the thing about power training, it has become a lost art in this modern day and age of fitness, right? Power training was always a staple of physical preparation for centuries, right? Centuries ago, the focus of fitness wasn't aesthetics or vanity, but it was more so about capability. And, men back then really prioritized power training. Nowadays, modern fitness, it's all about aesthetics, it's all about vanity. Fitness now is just all about those bright LED gyms that you see on Instagram with all these fancy machines, right? Don't get me wrong, they're unbeatable for isolation. They have their time and place. They're very flashy, very marketable, easy to sell. But it kind of made fitness into a commodity. And in that process, bodybuilding became the default way of training. And in that shift, power training just became a lost art. And here's one thing that I've noticed in my 7 years of coaching. I feel like men nowadays, they have completely lost the ability to be powerful and athletic. And to me, that is a sad sight to see. Even men in their mid-20s. And I think especially in this day and age of modernism and sedentarism, combined with the lack of knowledge out there of training for power, most men have just completely lost that quality. And this is important because power is the signal of youth and the mark of capability, and men have just completely lost that. And I think a big reason of why that is most men, they just don't know where to start, right? They can tell you everything about, isolating the long head of the tricep. They can tell you everything about their chest, back, leg split, but they know nothing about training for power. They have no clue. They're literally in the dark. And I think a big reason for that is because there are so many philosophies online when it comes to training for power. I don't know about you guys, but when I was coming up in my fitness journey and when I was coming up as a coach, I would consume a lot of different content from a lot of different fitness creators. And here's the problem. There's so many philosophies regarding power training, and a lot of it is, contrary advice. One coach will say this, another coach says, don't do that and do this instead. This is the problem. Every coach online has their one and only way. Everyone picks a hill and dies on it. And here's the thing that you have to understand from the viewpoint of the coach. Picking a hill and dying on it, it's great for branding, right? It's great for building a cult audience. It's great for selling, their one and only way. But here's the thing, power training is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And any coach just selling one way or just prioritizing one method is prioritizing marketing over results. So when I look at all the content online, look at the field of, power training, athletic training, dynamic training, there's three main approaches where all these coaches fall under. And it's really important to assess each method, take the best from each one, but at the same time, not overcommit to just one method. So there's really three main methods that pretty much all coaches that, train for power and athleticism, they fall under. Okay, so these are the three methods. There's your traditional strength and conditioning method. There's also kind of more of that physical therapy approach. And then there's also kind of more of the movement centered approach. I'm going to break down each of these and the pros and cons for each. Okay, so for the traditional strength and conditioning method, two of my favorite coaches that fall under this umbrella are Will Rattel and Garage Strength. And these guys, when I say traditional strength and conditioning, think about like your high school coach, think about your collegiate strength and conditioning coach. These guys stick to the tried and true methods. They train heavy, fast, and hard. They focus on progressive overload. They focus on your major barbell lifts. And some pros to this kind of method is it's probably the best at developing raw power and strength, right? If you train under heavy loads, move them violently, you're going to just develop that engine, that motor. Another pro is that it's very observable and measurable. It's very easy to see progress. It's very easy to see where you break down. It's very easy to make adjustments. Another thing is it just creates absolute units, right? Like if you're training hard, heavy, fast, you're going to be jacked, you're going to be athletic, right? So some cons to this method, however, is that they're very intense methods, right? A lot of times they're training very heavy, sometimes too heavy for their own good. They're training very fast, they're training very hard, and so a lot of times this can cause injury, especially if you're kind of sloppy about your training. Like you definitely need guidance as when it comes to this type of training. Another thing is it doesn't really address symmetry, imbalance, or weak links as much. These guys are so focused on those big barbell lifts, the meat and potatoes, that a lot of times a lot of these smaller elements kind of get forgotten. There's also a very high learning curve. A lot of the barbell lifts, right, you need to learn a little bit. Also, it kind of prioritizes standard ranges of motion, right? They only squat, they only hinge, they only push, they only pull. They keep it so simple that the movement variability, it's kind of narrow. Another thing is there's not much individualization. They kind of have a factory approach to how they do things. They don't really care about the individual. They kind of have their set system and they kind of put everyone through the same exact system. So those are some pros and cons to that traditional strength and conditioning approach. The next approach I find that a lot of coaches fall under is more that physical therapy approach. One coach that really comes into mind is knees over toes guy when it comes to this approach. This method isn't really about training heavy, hard, and fast, kind of like those traditional SNC guys. This approach is really about building up, weak links, developing all aspects of the body, right? Your connective tissue, your joints, your ligaments, your muscles, and all ranges at an even level. And this indirectly, increasing athleticism and power because you're not going to get injured and you can train more, right? So some pros to this approach is it develops all muscles and ranges at an even level. And there's a high emphasis on mobility, balance, and symmetry. So these guys are pretty durable. They don't get hurt, and they can practice their sport or whatever they do longer and hence get more athletic, right? But some cons to this approach: it lacks intensity, right? They do not train as hard as these traditional SNC guys. They're really good at building up durable tissue, but they don't really actually practice the expression of raw power and strength like traditional SNC does. Okay, so that's kind of the more of the physical therapy approach. They're really good at building the tissue of the body, building durability, and bringing up the athlete at an even level, but they lack intensity and they don't practice raw power and strength as much as traditional SNC. Now, the last approach that I find a lot of coaches fall under is more of that movement-centered approach. Now, one coach or training philosophy that really comes into mind when it comes to the movement-centered approach is functional patterns. Now, these guys get a lot of hate online. A lot of what they say could be pseudoscience. They put a lot of other methods down. They kind of have a superiority complex, which is why I think they got a lot of hate. But they do some things right. I can admit that. This movement-centered approach is all about mastering movement mechanics. They believe that power and athleticism come from being efficient with your movement, moving your body in the right way, moving in a way where you can maximize the output just with the way that you move, right? So some pros to this type of approach: they're really good at full body integration. They know how to use their body effectively. They have maximized the efficiency. They're really good at co-contraction. They know where to contract, where to relax to perform a lot of these smooth athletic movements with good movement mechanics. And they know how to use the body elastically. That means that they know how to be loose with their body and kind of have that whip that a lot of athletic, powerful movements use. Some cons to this type of approach: again, it lacks intensity. These guys don't train as hard as the traditional strength and conditioning guys. They never get under heavy weight, and it's all about smoothness. And I find that these guys are good at moving smooth and efficient in a perfect world, in a quiet gym setting. But when it comes to actual sporting or actually real life events, these guys have never been under heavy weight. They've never moved anything really violently, so I think they miss out there. Also, it really builds no durability in the body. I find that the guys that are really centered around that movement approach, they're not only weak, but they're also pretty frail with their bodies. So these are the three main approaches when it comes to the field of power training right now. I think that the best approach lives where all three meet. So my approach, I like to take things from each methodology and kind of combine it into my own. Okay, so this is my approach to building power, athleticism, and dynamic ability. First, you need the engine. Now, this is the horsepower. This is your motor. You need the ability to produce force. If you want to be powerful, you need to express power. So you need to train heavy, hard, and fast. So this is basically taking from that traditional S&C method. Now, you not only need the horsepower and the motor, but you need the vessel. You need a body that can withstand the power and transfer it, right? You can have the biggest engine in the world, but if the frame of your vehicle is off and it can't really handle that power, and you're going to get hurt, or it's just not going to come out efficiently, it doesn't matter, right? So you need the engine. You also need a body that can withstand the power and transfer it effectively. Next, you need the brain, right? You can have an engine, you can have the frame, but you also need to learn the skill of using the engine to drive the vessel across every movement. Now, this kind of takes inspiration from more of that movement approach. So as you can see, I think the best approach to building power lies within the middle of these three approaches, right? You need raw strength and power. You also need a frame and durability to handle that power. And then you also need the brain, and you also need the skills of learning how to use your body and efficient movement mechanics. So let's break it down. We'll start with the engine. Okay, so how do you build horsepower? So horsepower is going to come from two things. It's going to come from your muscle size and your nervous system output. How much you can output with your nervous system. Okay, so bigger muscle basically equals more force. Okay, but notice this is a special type of muscle. It's called myofibrillar muscle. Now, this is the muscle that actually helps in contractile force. This is the muscle responsible for contracting harder. So step one for everyone that wants to get more powerful is just build that type of muscle, okay? A lot of beginners, you must build it first. I see a lot of beginners, they hop to all these, advanced training methods, right off the bat, when the first thing you should do is just build bigger myofibrillar muscle so that you can produce more force. And even if you're advanced and you built muscle prior, you always have to keep watering that to never let it dip, okay? But you have to build the right kind of muscle, which is myofibrillar muscle. This is going to come from, it's not going to come from low weight, high rep type exercises, but you need to train in a certain sweet spot that builds the engine and also gets you jacked. So to build myofibrillar muscle, this is what you're going to focus on. You want to target the sweet spot of 75 to 80% intensity, and you want to work in that 6 to 12 rep range. So this means that you're working at moderate to high reps with a real respectable load. So these are my favorite exercises to building myofibrillar hypertrophy. First, in the lower body, I would really prioritize unilateral movements, especially when you're working in that 6 to 12 rep range. Unilateral movements are great for building myofibrillar hypertrophy. Also, you also get to work each side independently, so it's good for addressing balance and symmetry. So a couple of my favorite ones: Bulgarian split squat loaded heavy, single leg RDL also loaded heavy, lunge variations loaded heavy. So think about your front lunges, your reverse lunges. Another good option for building myofibrillar hypertrophy in the legs are squats. Now, you guys know that I prefer free weight squats, but when you are working in this higher rep range here and your focus is solely myofibrillar hypertrophy, squat machines are going to be of great use as well. So two of my favorite squat machines are the belt squat and the hack squat. As far as the hinge pattern, right, working your glutes and your hamstrings, the king of all hinge patterns when it comes to myofibrillar hypertrophy is going to be the Romanian deadlift, because you never set that weight down. There's constant tension on your muscles. Now, as far as building myofibrillar hypertrophy in the upper body, I like to prioritize dumbbell presses and pulls. Now, you can't go as heavy on dumbbells as on barbells, but here's the thing, since we are working at moderate to high reps and you're not working at, your maximal loads, I think dumbbells often are better for hypertrophy than barbells. So this includes things like your incline presses, your shoulder presses, your one arm dumbbell rows, right? Your chest supported rows with dumbbells. Another good option for developing myofibrillar hypertrophy in the upper body is weighted calisthenics. These exercises are perfect for, that 6 to 12 rep range. Also, you can't neglect the joint isolation work. You definitely want to work your biceps, your triceps, your shoulders, right? Think about your curls, extensions, lateral raises, things like that. And also, when it comes to just strictly hypertrophy, machines definitely have a place. A lot of movement patterns you can't effectively hit with free weights. So I'm thinking about things like your chest fly, thinking about things like pronated rows, right? Targeting more of that upper back. So machines definitely have a place here. So you want to focus on these type of movements, right? Again, at that 75 to 80% intensity at that 6 to 12 rep range, okay? Now, the next aspect of building that horsepower, building that motor is your nervous system output. Now, this is about how much you can control your nervous system to activate the muscles that you have. So this is more about fatiguing the nervous system, not so much about fatiguing muscle. So you want to train recruitment. This means that you're trying to recruit all the muscles that you have, and you do this by training heavy. Now, you want to target about 80% or more in intensity, right? 80% of your 1 rep max or more. And you're going to be working in that 6 and below rep range. So basically on all these lifts, you want to fully send it with your nervous system. So this means heavy loads where you are forced to fully send with your nervous system, or lighter to moderate loads, move with maximum speed and maximum intent. So to train nervous system output, it's going to be best trained through ground-based compound lifts. Now, ground-based compound lifts where your feet are on the ground and you're doing barbell lifts, this is going to give you the most stimulus on your nervous system. So for the lower body, we're going to work in that, again, 80% or more of 1 rep max, under 6 reps. Free weight squats are the best here. So think about your back squats, your front squats, your Zercher squats. Anything you can just load super heavy, really stimulate that nervous system. Also, power cleans, high pulls, a lot of Olympic lifting variations are great here. Now, these you won't be, pushing the heavy loads as like you did in your back squat. But here's the thing. It's a little lighter, but you still fully send it with your nervous system because you move that weight as fast and violently as you can. Also, a good one here is deadlifts, right? You can push a lot of weight on deadlifts and it really recruits your nervous system. As far as the upper body, when it comes to nervous system output, now you want to be kind of training more of the barbell lifts where your focus is on just moving as much weight as you can. So instead of dumbbell pressing, I would shift over to, more of that barbell bench press, really going heavy. Same, right? You can do overhead press with the barbell, trying to push as much weight as you can. Two of my other favorite movements for just sheer nervous system output in the upper body are the push press and the push jerk. Now, this is very similar to overhead press, but using a little bit of leg drive with the push press, and with the jerk, you're actually violently catching the weight with your lower body as well. Now, these are really good for just maximizing nervous system output, right? They're not the best for hypertrophy because you are using a little bit of momentum, but as far as just sheer full sending it, these are really good options. You can kind of do the same exact thing with the bent over row. So heavy barbell bent rows as opposed to, your lighter dumbbell rows. And then you can even also do what they call a Pendlay row, which is kind of using a little bit of momentum in your lower body to really hike the bar up, right? Again, not the best for hypertrophy because you're kind of using momentum, but it's great for sheer nervous system output. So these are probably my favorite for maximizing nervous system output. These are also just some special reps that you can kind of incorporate into your workouts that will really maximize the force output. These are just different ways to do reps that will give you more horsepower and a bigger engine. So first is what they call the Stretch Shortening Cycle rep. Now, basically how you perform this rep is you're going to control 75% of the way down and then drop fast in that last 25% and bounce out of that bottom. So you're kind of using that rubber band effect. You're kind of using a little bit of momentum. And this type of rep is really good because you're going to be able to do significantly more weight when you do reps like this. So you're going to be able to maximize nervous system output. And one thing on this type of rep, it uses what they call elasticity and the stretch shortening cycle, which I'm going to go into more depth later. But I just wanted to quickly touch on it here as well, because you can definitely incorporate it while you're doing these barbell and dumbbell lifts, right? Another type of rep that you want to incorporate into your routine is the concentric only rep. Now, this is basically any time that you're not lowering the barbell at all. You start from a position where it's already, you just go up, right? So I'll put an example right here, right? Like you don't actually lower it down. You start with the barbell already down and all you do is just press it up, right? So it's a dead start from the bottom. And the reason I like this kind of rep because it focuses all your energy into pure acceleration and neural drive, and you don't really think about lowering the weight, and you don't really get fatigued from that. And all you focus on is moving that weight as violently as you can. So that's another good type of special repetition to add to your arsenal. And the last type of special repetition is the unbroken rep. Now, this is any time you're not really resetting between reps. So take a squat, for example. You can go down, up, pause at the top, and then go down again. Or you could just go down, up, not reset at the top, and just go down, up really fast. And what I like about this is it forces nervous system output, explosive force through the whole set, not just a single rep or a single effort. And also, you're going to find that when you're going down, up very fast, the momentum compounds. And it's kind of like pedaling a bike, right? When you first start pedaling a bike, it's very hard to get the pedals to go fast because you're starting from no motion at all. But when you're going downhill and the pedals are already going, now you can really go as fast as you can. And it's kind of the same with these unbroken reps. When you're going down, up, down, up, down, up, you do that through a cycle on your fourth and your fifth rep, you're going to be moving very fast and you're going to be maximizing explosive force. So these are 3 special repetitions to include into your routine to maximize engine, maximize the horsepower. So now that we covered that, let's go into the second foundation, which is the vessel. So this is all about building a body that can harness the engine's power, right? Doesn't matter how much raw power or raw strength that you have, if your body and your frame can't handle it, not only is it useless, but it could honestly be detrimental because it can cause injury, right? So you need strong tissue, right? You need your muscle, bone, tendon, and ligament to be able to withstand the forces that you're producing with your engine, right? A weak hamstring under stretch while you're sprinting is going to lead to a tear. Joints that can't take a landing is going to lead to injury. Tendons that can't take repeated force is going to lead to chronic issues, right? A good example of this is Derrick Rose, right? Elite engine, probably one of the most explosive, strongest basketball players ever. He could jump out of the gym, but the way that I see it, his frame couldn't really carry the force his own engine made, right? He had the raw power and the raw strength, but his frame couldn't handle all of that, right? He had a motor bigger than his vessel, and hence injuries happened, right? Another thing that you have to prioritize if you want to build that body that is capable of wielding that power is you need to develop full body mobility, right? You need a pathway for the force to travel through, right? It doesn't matter how explosive you are. If you're tight in the hamstrings, you're not going to be able to sprint. Doesn't matter how much you can bench press. If you cannot rotate through the spine, you're not going to be able to punch and throw. So basically, more range equals more room to generate power. And I think this is a big mistake a lot of men make. They focus on building that raw power and that raw engine, that raw strength, but they never work on their full body mobility, and hence they can't do a lot of these athletic actions, because to do these athletic actions, you need to be able to go through these ranges of motion to actually express that strength, right? So most men, they train only in middle ranges, okay? They train in the strong, comfortable range, right? They never load the end ranges of motion, right? So think about like a squat. Like most people will go down to about 90 degrees. No, not many people drop down all the way to the bottom. Same exact thing with presses, right? A lot of people, they don't go all the way down to their chest is fully opened up. They go about 90 and come up. Although they are moving heavy weight, they're only strong in that comfortable range. But you need to be training more of these extreme ranges of motion, because that's where a lot of these ligament joint adaptations happen, but also that's where a lot of power actually happens. These are the ranges where you actually either express power through or you land in after you're done expressing power, like you land from a jump or you catch yourself while you're falling, right? So you need to be developing these more extreme ranges of motion. So the answer to this is full range of motion training, right? You want to load long and under tension. And this range, like I said, is going to build up that soft tissue, your muscle, tendon, and ligament, build up your body so that it has the capability to withstand the forces that you put upon it, right? The trade with this type of training, though, is it's different from that general strength training that we talked about in the previous section, right? When you are training for strength under length and your focus is building up the soft tissue, muscles, tendons, and ligaments, you want to go a little lighter in weight, but you can go a lot deeper in the range. So you're going to build strength, tissue, and mobility all in these deep ranges of motion with these exercises. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys my favorite ones for doing this, and a couple things to keep in mind before I go into these. You don't want to go explosive with these. You want to go very slow with all these exercises designed to build up the resilience of your body. You want to own the positions. You want to control the end ranges, not just pass through it, right? You want to train safe, right? Again, no bouncing or momentum into vulnerable stretch. You want to be able to completely control all these positions. You want to build your tendons by going slow, and sustained load and time under tension is exactly what remodels connective tissue. So keep that in mind. If you want to build your tendons, go slow and controlled and focus on time under tension. Also, don't try to force any range of motion that's just not there. You have to earn it, and it's a slow adaptation. You're going to grow into it over time. So when you're going to these fuller ranges of motion, deeper into these movements, don't try to force it. Just go to where you're somewhat comfortable, and over time, it's going to be a slow adaptation, but you will get more range of motion. So I'm going to show you guys my favorite set of movements for doing a lot of things, right? 3 adaptation. Full range of motion builds strength, tissue durability, and mobility. So you're doing a lot of things with these movements, and I'm going to show you guys my favorite ones here. So for the upper body, full range of motion chest flies and dumbbell flies, really good for that pec length, opening up that chest. Full range rows where you're reaching all the way in front, really good for shoulder mobility and protracting your thoracic spine. Dumbbell pullovers, full range, right? Going as far back as you can. Really good for opening up that thoracic spine. Full range of push-ups and dips. Really good for shoulder mobility, right? Going all the way down. Full range pull-ups and lat pull-down. Again, one of my favorites, right? Try to reach all the way up at the bottom. Go start at a dead hang on each of these. Overhead triceps going all the way down for durability in the elbows. And incline bicep curl for bicep length. Again, leaning back, trying to maximize the stretch. So you want to do these all slow, controlled to full ranges of motion to build up tissue durability, strength in long ranges, and mobility. Okay, for the trunk and lower back, these are a couple of my favorites. Okay, so I really like the glute ham developer sit-up where you're trying to extend as far back as you can, really open up that lower back and that thoracic spine. I really like full range good mornings. I like to do them with the Zercher grip here. That's going to maximize how far you can bend forward. Side bends for that lateral flexion, going as far to each side as possible. Core rotation, really opening up that low back and trying to rotate as far back as you can. I really like the back bridge for full body spinal extension, not only just your spine, but for the anterior part of your lower body as well. Kettlebell windmills, probably one of my favorite mobility / strength exercises. It practices loaded rotation and side flexion and full body mobility. For the lower body, a couple of my favorites. Deep lunges. This could be a lot of things, right? You could do deep lunges where you step extra far in front. You could do Bulgarian split squats, but elevate the front foot so you can go down further on each rep. Anytime you can practice deep lunges, you're going to maximize hip extension. Full range Romanian deadlifts where you're trying to reach as far down as you can. Maybe doing it on a plate as well where your feet are elevated so you can reach down more. That is going to maximize hamstring length. Deep squats, right? Ass to grass squats where you're controlling that bottom range. Really good for knee flexion. Deep sumo squats are one of my favorite as well. You can even have your feet elevated for this one. Really good for hip and adductor opening. Lateral lunges where you're going all the way down to each side. Really good for knee flexion and adductor mobility and ankle mobility as well if you keep that foot down. Full calf raises as well. Really good for ankle mobility, getting that stretch on that Achilles. So these are a couple of my favorites to maximize mobility, train strength through length, and just build more durable connective tissue so that you can actually have a frame that is capable of withstanding the forces that your engine produces. Now, the last foundation is the brain. Now, this is all about putting it together. And honestly, this is one of the most important parts, right? You can have the raw power, you can have the raw strength, you can have the body that's capable of handling that power, but you also need to learn the skill of being athletic, being explosive, how to actually utilize that strength and put it through the body. So the key to this is you have to learn how to be elastic, not just muscular and strong. Now, the term elastic, I'm sure you guys have heard it before. What is elasticity? What's the definition? All elasticity is, it's not a muscle you build. All being elastic is, it's just a different movement strategy, okay? And this is the movement strategy for a lot of these powerful athletic movements. It's a different way of using the body than the slow grinding muscular effort that everyone knows, right? If you want to get from point A to point B, right, using elasticity is just another strategy to get there, okay? And I think this concept is probably the hardest thing to teach the average gym bro because they only know slow and controlled because they're so conditioned to just go into the gym. So when it comes to being elastic, I want you to think about it like this, right? It's just another movement strategy. So think about something like the jump, right? There's two ways to jump, okay? Two different movement strategies. Strategy A is the elastic movement strategy, and strategy B is more the muscular movement strategy, right? That's all elasticity is. It's a different way of moving, and the way that a lot of these gym bros just can't seem to understand, okay? So take these two ways. The elastic movement strategy to jumping is dropping fast, right? Loading as fast as you can. So being loose, dropping at the snap of a finger, loading the spring, and then immediately going up, right? Using arm swing, everything. So it's like dropping fast, boom, loading, going up as high as you can, very fast. You're gonna see that that's gonna produce a very high jump, and it's not gonna take much effort. Compare that to strategy B. This is more the muscular way to jump. You're gonna slow down and you're gonna hold a quarter squat position. Let's say you hold that for 5 seconds. And then from there, you're gonna jump. There's no rapid stretch. It's not like you're moving like a rubber band or a whip. You're gonna find that if you jump like that, it's gonna result in a lower jump. That's all elasticity is, guys. Elasticity is just a different way of moving your body. It's a way of rapidly stretching and contracting your body. If you think about these two strategies, you're gonna find that strategy A, not only are you gonna jump more higher, but it's gonna take less energy because you're relying less on muscular contraction and more on force redirection. And this is the big reason why, an example here, fighters love the jump rope, right? Because you get millions of reps just drilling that bounciness, that reflexive, efficient footwork. Elasticity makes you more explosive and more efficient, and it's a real cheat code, and you have to learn how to use it. So elasticity is the language of all athletic movements, okay? And all elastic movements use what they call the stretch shortening cycle. And this is rapidly loading your muscles with potential energy and then releasing it in an explosive contraction, like a rubber band. And it's a skill in itself. The more you do it, the more you can use that reflexive snap, right? And I'm gonna break down the stretch and shortening cycle here with an exact movement. But basically every stretch shortening cycle follows the same sequence, okay? First, you have to relax. This is a big part of why like a lot of gym bros can't get athletic because they don't know how to relax. You have to relax to go down fast or to load fast, right? You can't throw a hard punch from a clenched fist, right? You need to be loose first. So first step is to be loose. Then is to load up, a forceful stretch, forceful load up into whatever muscle that you're trying to be athletic with. And then from that forceful stretch, you're snapping into a contraction. Every explosive movement that uses the stretch shortening cycle and elasticity follows this same sequence. So let me show you with two examples here. Let me show you with a jump, Okay, so if I'm trying to jump, I don't go down slow. I'm not tight as I'm going down. You gotta be loose first. So body's first loose, then you're gonna see I forcefully go down and I bring my arms down. So I go from loose to a forceful stretch, forceful load up, all in an instant. And from that forceful stretch, I immediately snap into contraction. You want to think about the stretch shortening cycle like a rubber band, right? When you stretch that rubber band and you let it go, it immediately goes up. And it's the same exact thing. So you first relax, get into a forceful stretch, and use that stretch to kind of rebound against and power up that jump, almost using that stretch to propel you further, right? So relaxation, forceful stretch, snap into contraction. I'll show you guys for another pattern here. Let's take a throw, right? So when I'm throwing something, first I'm going to start by being relaxed, right? You got to be loose so that you can forcefully load fast, right? Again, like I said, you can't throw from a clenched fist being tight. You have to be loose. So first I'm going to be loose so I can load into this position fast. Then I'm going to load, right? I'm going to rotate my spine, load my hips. In this position, my body is stretched. The rubber band is stretched. I'm ready to go. And from there, I'm going to use that stretch and rapidly rebound into a throw, right? Again, like you can see on this pattern as well, relaxation to a forceful stretch to a snap into contraction. Okay, so basically, you have to learn how to be elastic, and all elastic patterns use what they call the stretch shortening cycle. This is a cycle where you relax, you forcibly stretch, and you snap into contraction, and it's a skill like anything else. So you have to be comfortable with using this muscular pattern. So now you know how to use the stretch shortening cycle, be elastic, but here's the thing that you have to also realize. There is a very big distinction between just performing power in one single rep or effort and performing power in a series, in a sequence, in a bout, right? And here's an example, right? Anyone, even a stiff bodybuilder, can throw one lunging forward, completely off balance punch and still generate a lot of power, right? Through one punch. But how many people can do 10 in a row, right? Like Ilya Topuria, right, left, never leaving their center of mass, right? These are two very different skills. Power once and power repeatedly are two completely different skills, and you have to realize that. And you have to be also learning how to produce power in a sequence as well. So how do you build power in sequence, not just in one effort? It's the same idea as those unbroken reps that I was talking about earlier in the weight room. But instead of just moving weights, now you're doing it with explosive movements, jumps and rotations, multiple cycles, no resets, and you have to be skilled in just going from one explosive effort to another. You have to master the transition between them. And the key to mastering that transition lies in what we call the amortization phase. And the amortization phase is the switch between landing and propelling. So I'll show you an example right here. As I'm jumping and I land, there's a split second here when I'm going from receiving the force to propelling that force. And in that sweet spot is what we call the amortization phase. When you're talking about rotating, right, it's different, right? When you're rotating, when you shift from one way and you load one side and you go to immediately snapping back to the other, that transition point is called the amortization phase. And this is where you sequence explosive efforts together. So you have to make it as smooth and effortless as possible, and you really have to master that phase of movement, the transition between landing and propelling. Now, every different movement is going to have its own stretch shortening cycle intricacies. The way to get elastic in a specific action is just to get better at that action and get more practice, right? For example, a boxer can rotate and throw punches without going off balance, but he probably can't transfer it to a triple jump and vice versa. So you need to master a stretch shortening cycle intricacy for each type of movement. But I do think there are general elastic skills that every man should master. So I'm going to go into these. So they fall under 3 patterns, and there's variations within each pattern. So the first major elastic pattern is sprinting. Okay. And you want to be comfortable in max effort, max power sprinting, right? Learning how to impart as much force into the ground and rebound and go as fast as you can. But also, you want to master the act of jogging, right? Running for long bouts, right? Not producing as much power in each stride, but being efficient. You also want to master the skill of changing directions, whether that be laterally or forward and back. I think these are all important skills and they all fall under the general quality of sprinting. Okay. The next major category of elastic skills that every man should learn is jumping. Okay. So you should be able to do max effort singles where you're jumping as high or as far as you can. You should be able to do repeated max effort jumps. So jumping as high as you can for repeated efforts in a sequence. And you should also be able to do repeated moderate effort jumps where you're not jumping as higher as far as you can, but you're able to kind of cycle through jumps and make it a smooth movement. The third general elastic skill every man should learn is explosive rotation. So you should be able to do max effort single throws and swings. You should be able to generate a lot of power in one singular effort, but you should also be able to do repeated throws where you can throw something and in a repeated sequence. That goes the same for swings and punches as well. You want to learn how to rotate without going off balance and make it one smooth, efficient pattern. So that's everything. These are the 3 foundations to building true power and athleticism. Remember, you have to build that engine, build that raw power and strength. Then you got to build the frame, build the durability of your body, build up that mobility to transfer that power. Then you have to build the motor skills, learn elasticity, learn how to effectively use the stretch shortening cycle in single efforts and in sequence. And if you can do all those 3, you will become a more powerful individual. If you guys stayed till the end of the video, I really appreciate it. If you want to revamp your whole training program to look something more like this that prioritizes more power and athleticism, go ahead and book a call in the description. I would love to chat and see where I can help out. Otherwise, I'm gonna see you guys in the next one.